morning. We have Ron joining us as well, and Pat Morgan from the Army Corps of Engineers. And the panel is going to be on risk management, how we can cope with risk. As Stefano was addressing this morning, this remains a very important issue in our field and in our activities. And I've prepared a small introduction to that, to this panel. The risk, of course, is dealing with this kind of issues, but of course also with minor risks throughout all different projects, large or smaller scale. So, which risks are we talking about? The technical and the financial risk to conduct the project to the end. This is a very general introduction. And this, to manage this correctly, the role of different stakeholders is very important. This was pointed out this morning already, and I want to share the experiences of the different people here around the table on that. The risk of the job itself, technical risk to perform the job itself, of course, and what is certainly interesting in all type of industry, the soil risk is not the minor one. But also, and we have seen this in the presentation of this morning, there are risk situations in connections with the site itself. This is the risk goes by the project on the existing site, coping with the urban situation, surrounding buildings, existing buildings, and also risk goes by the local conditions, including, for example, archaeological problems in the city of Roma. And finally, I think we should question that there is an increase of risk or not by the recent more aggressive design and build environment. Because finally the question really is not only which type of risk, but who owns the risk. And this question really is, this question really is, it was supposed to be written in a contractual method, and I really think that this is the main issue to be discussed today. And when we discuss this, it's important to understand that the risk appears very early in the project. This study was done by Stowers in 1993, showing that the percentage of the cases where the problem originates in design is the most important, whereas of course the problem occurs usually during construction. So it's very important to realize that the origin of the problems is usually very early. And so in the design phase, it's important to identify with the different experts around the table what we do know, and we are sure we know it, what we actually don't know, but we know that we don't know it, and then finally what we don't know, but we don't know that we don't know it. And that is very important to try to go through that as early as possible. So it's really risk from design to construction, and for this reason it's important to define the scope very clearly. Of course, when we speak about layer projects like these ones, the scope is pretty well defined. But in our daily activities, we are often confronted with people that don't know exactly what the scope of their project is, and that is very important. Go in detailed definition of the scope, understand also the level of performance that you request. This is the second point that is very important. And then, of course, analyze the construction process. Is it conservative, innovative, is it adapted to the situation, and so on and so on. Define ownership, allocate the risk to someone, and define which contractual relationship comes from this involvement, and their early involvement is of the essence. If you look to the management of the risk during the process, if you manage it very early in the pre-feasibility stage, then you will reduce the risk the most throughout your process. Whereas you start in the implementation stage, you will have a largely more poor approach. So it is important to discuss this. And when we say to discuss this and we allocate this, we come to the problem of communication, because the risk throughout the process of project is usually a problem of good communication between the different persons. The lack of information, is the information complete? Is the information correct? The lack of allocation and the unclear definition of stakeholders, role. And finally, of course, all this will result in contractual risk. So how can we mitigate that? Informing all clients about the importance of geotechnical risk. Foundation cost is less than 10% of the total of the project, but the risks caused by foundations on the project is exceeding 20% as the consequences. So we have to avoid unexpected shocks and delays, and for this reason we have to employ and to engage people, experts and contractors as soon as possible, and to apply a coherent and integrated geotechnical risk reduction process. Share information, be transparent, this was also highlighted this morning, and communicate. And finally, once this is done, risk assessment, risk allocation, test and monitor during the construction so that you can evolve and make the process evolutive. And last but not least, and this is also a discussion that we need to have, can we define, as Stefano was suggesting, new contractual relationships where we are more partners in the process than fighting against each other? So, in the course of the preparation of this panel, I asked a few questions that are listed here to those panelists, and we have received a couple of answers, not from all of them, but from a few of them, and so I would like the different persons to explain. I will start with the ones that have prepared some slides on the topic, so I will go through that with them, and then we start the discussion. So please, prepare, you can have the...
okay.
Yeah, I will do that.
Right, thank you. So, can you hear me? And I can hear that. So, just generally, not specifically to Tideway, but I think the client and contractor underestimating the complexity or cost of construction from early stages. If you haven't got the right understanding of that, then something's going to go wrong. Also, I think increasingly, construction's got a complex multi-tier supply chain, and making sure that the requirements that the client has painstakingly put together, hopefully, to try and balance risk, is actually flowing down through to the specialists that are actually doing it, and sometimes that doesn't happen. We certainly see that we believe, as I believe on a project like ours, that you're more likely to get unexpected things happening nearer the surface than you are at depth. In London, as you've seen, it's a very well-known geology. Unexpected things can happen at depth, but they're much more likely to happen in the surface and around the extensive infrastructure that's there. And one thing also, particularly in mega projects with cities, like you see, the stakeholder interface is absolutely enormous and complicated, and it's not just what you're putting in the ground, it's how you're doing it, and if you haven't got the local authorities and the consent granting bodies on your side, even if you've got planning permission, your project will be held up, and that could cost millions and millions of pounds a day or a week. So that's important. I'll just briefly go. So for us, you saw the mentioned about the baseline using NEC contract. We spent an awful lot of time in the tender stage developing our risk register and sharing our risk register as a client with the risk registers of the contractors. The NEC contract is very good to draw out stuff and manage risk and make sure that there's an open approach to that. And that's certainly, I think, a case that we followed in the UK. We want to have very good risk and transparency between the client and the contractor, and I think we want to be very agile to working collaboratively with the contractor to respond to those risks, and also to work with contractors too, for where we have opportunities where we can do something differently to value engineering and other approaches, and where possible to make sure that we can balance some risks with some opportunities too. So I think on technology related to risk was one of the questions there. There's a huge increase that someone mentioned earlier, I think, yourself, about the change over the last 10 or 20 years in technology. I was standing on a diaphragm wall platform watching one of Bashir's guys digging a diaphragm wall panel about 4 months ago, and what an amazing array of data did he have in order to keep that panel straight and in the right place, know where it is, know what the angle of installation was and everything. So I think we can certainly do an awful lot more in that area to understand what we're doing and planning and putting people through using virtual reality, for example, to simulate working in a tunnel boring machine environment before you actually go down and work there. And one of the key things I think is as well is very good transparency between different clients. And it's great, sort of, the supply chain here talking together, but I think clients as well, certainly the UK, sharing knowledge much more openly so that lessons are being learned. And I won't want to hog it too much, but I think we contractor mechanisms are really important to get the involvement before you start going out to pre-qualification even. So in very early planning stages, the size of the packages of work, the design responsibility, health and safety standards, the type of contract, and what we did also is once we were in contract, we had a sort of period of about 6 months where the contractors who previously been in competition with each other and maybe not able to share all the best ideas were then effectively working together with us in the alliance, and a number of issues being able to be dealt with and put forward there by all of the parties working together. So that's my contribution. Thanks.
Okay. Next is Mr. Christensen.
Yes, same. Does it work as well? I don't have it. No. It works.
Yeah,
It works. First of all, I would like to start with the geotechnical risks to follow up on my presentation. It's not the total repetition, but maybe a little broader view on what I actually said. Try to pin it out. When you, as an owner, wants to tender and to get contracts on board, it's very essential to have the right mindset also in the owner's organization. And my perspective and what I represent in our company is not to try in any way to hide risks and just puff them over on the shoulders of the contractors. It's very easy that one could get that opinion from owners, but we are a company who saw the success for the Great Belt and especially on the Øresund because we dare to be open-minded and to be transparent, because it's not stated anywhere, but what we would like to is actually that the contractors get in and get a fair contract, and that he actually owes the money, not a big amount because we have to pay, but that he owes some money so that he does not have red figures at the bottom. And that starts already from the pre-investigation phase, where you need to be transparent, where you need to get all information available in order to get the bids as close as possible and to get the risks actually being pinned out and discussed. If we, for instance, like we had competitive dialogue, you have a possibility to discuss the risks. The geotechnical risk is also in a tunnel project, of course, one of the biggest issues and the biggest uncertainty. By this investigation, you could say that maybe we could have done it without and then be proud of having much cheaper bids coming in. And then we were for sure that it wouldn't have been a technical, construction-wise, feasible and well-organized project, but we would have to have thousands or hundreds or tens of lawyers doing nothing else than claim handling. I'm not saying that we'll not come in that situation. That's not what I'm saying. I hope that we are not, but I can guarantee that our troubles in that respect will be far less than if we haven't done what we have done. So if everything is equal, then we will come much better out here. And it's the whole mindset, not only on the geotechnical side, but it's also a mindset of trying to find the win-win situations. Try to see in the other partner's perspective, and I call it partner because not opponents or enemy or whatever you would like to call it, but a partner. Put yourself as an owner, put yourself in the contractor's position and try to see it from his side. Similarly, if the contractor does that, then there's often a ground to discuss the issues, and I call it win-win. I know it's a common used term, but it actually, for my purpose, means that I try to see what the other party could gain from this and try to see what I could assist there, and I expect that the other party also try to see what I could gain. So that way, that it's not black and white, that we found some common ground on this aspect. On purpose, I do not mention the designers. Denmark is a very consultant-heavy country where architects and designers have a lot to say. And I dare to say that without skilled consultants, we couldn't do what we have done, and we could not in the future. But the most important thing is that they should never come in between the owner and the contractor. The consultants is my tool. My consultants are managed by me, and they do what I pay them to do. They have also some interest in this field here, you could say for obvious reasons. And it's very difficult to get win-win situations. So you have to decide whether you want to be strong with your consultant or you want to be transparent, have a good relation, and believe for a good project with your contractor. I go for the latter, and then of course I also expect the contractor and his consultant and the design and build to be well orchestrated, to be well managed by the contractor. So it all, of course, comes down to know the soil. It all comes down to know the potential settlements, the different methods to be used, and the normal risk management methodology. ISO 31000 or something I learned from one of my skilled engineers at home. This is not rocket science here, but this simply represents the norms way of going through risk assessment here, that you have to establish the context. In our case, where are we? We are between Denmark and Germany. What do we build? Yeah, we do not build a bridge, we build a tunnel. Okay, how do we build that? You dig some, you excavate and you dredge and you put a tunnel down in layers where there was something before. If it's Paleogene clay on the German side, then you learn and know that the clay will react like what's called swamp, that actually attracts water again and will swell, and you have to cope with that. On the Danish side, you maybe have much harder clay. And maybe there's not such a matter of settlement at all to be discussed, but more a matter of constructability. So you make your different risks based on that one, and you make risk assessment a daily working on all levels. You analyze the risk, you make the frequencies and consequences, and you make it a tool for your daily evaluation, and you secure that it comes all the way up to the executive management actually to be involved in this. Experts are very strong within one field, but it's also often what is in between the different fields that creates the problems here. So yeah, the risk evaluation and actually the conclusion what to do is the whole core of this. And of course, my last remarks in this respect here would be that the starting point of all of this is that the one, when you create a contract, the one who can actually best influence and mitigate a risk, it be the contractor or be the owner, should be the one who owns the risk. That's the fundamental risk principle or distribution of risk between the owner and the contractor. And then there should be, to the highest extent possible, an open discussion about what is meant by the different risks here. But risk allocation to the one who can bear the risk, that's a fundamental issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker. Yes, if you can just move on this.
It's Mr. Dwivedi.
Sorry?
Mr. Dwivedi. Yes.
The next speaker, please.
So my perspective may be a little different than the rest of the panel. I'm coming from the side of an owner. And for us, I represent the Corps of Engineers in the U.S., and we have a portfolio of about 700 and some dams that present a life safety risk. So everything we frame with our contracting and our remediation is associated with reducing that life safety risk, and that's the mindset we come from. When we hear risk, we don't think contract risk immediately. We think about life safety risk. But how we contract to remediate our dams and take care of them, and how we handle that contract risk correctly contributes to how efficiently we can buy down that life safety risk for us. So I want to talk a little bit about what we found and some of the things we do to try to mitigate that risk and how we share that risk maybe with the contractors. We had several of our projects were experiencing significant cost growth and time growth, more importantly cost variation and time variation. So we did a what we call a root cause analysis, and to look for where that cost growth was happening for us. And what we found is that really it starts in the planning phase, the early feasibility levels for us. And I'll go through that a little bit here with you of what we found. And it translates later, obviously, into construction risk and contract risk to others. So basically, uncertainty in planning contributes to risk in your design, and then risk in your design contributes to variations in your cost and your time as you execute your project. So if you can remove that uncertainty early on, you can certainly help control your time and cost growth a little better. We reviewed 5 of our projects. These are the 5 here. You can see the variation we had in cost and time on those projects. And this was actually prior to construction. This wasn't during construction. This was from feasibility level to the point in time we were about ready to award a construction. We'd already had this much variation in our cost estimates. Now the significance for that as an owner is we have the burden of securing the funds for the project. The government, that means we got to go to our political constituents and ask for this funding. And they want to know what this funding is buying them. So we have to identify that early on, we have to budget for it, and then we have to execute that budget. So when you have this kind of variation, your credibility goes down. It goes down significantly. Your ability to secure the funding goes away, and then obviously your ability to reduce that life safety risk, which is your ultimate goal, is prolonged or goes away. So what we looked at was where was the primary areas that our cost growth was happening, and we kind of boxed them into groups, and we found that the technical details of our contracts was a significant part of it, but a big portion was also of how we estimated the means and methods of what our contractors would do and how they would go about the work, and our own design and oversight costs. So we went into those, we looked for the primary reasons of those, and the main thing I want to get to, and I'll try to get to these fairly quick because I know we're late on time, was when we tracked it all back, what it really came down to was the lack of seasoned, experienced folks at the very initiation of the project. We had designers, we do a lot of our design in-house, that didn't really understand the means and methods. They didn't understand that if you're doing a cut-off wall of your staging area may be a significant part of your uncertainty. They didn't understand a lot of the inherent diversion of water. A lot of times could draw your, and what we found out was that the support elements of the major project were driving a lot of our cost change, not necessarily the uncertainties in the foundation and so forth. So we implemented a bunch of corrective actions. The big arrow you see is really trying to introduce the subject matter experts earlier into the process, getting them involved to help identify these uncertainties. What we found was our teams in developing the risk registers would often identify these risks early on, but what they didn't have the experience to do was really quantify how big those risks could be, the magnitude, and how much those could get us off schedule or increase our cost. So that was our goal. I think this kind of goes to the slide that you presented earlier. You know, you got your top group of these that, this top group box, the top two boxes are really the uncertainties or the things you know, but the uncertainties you can control. The two at the bottom are your unknown unknowns, basically, and if you don't know about them, you can't implement corrective measures. And the only way you can really learn about those unknown unknowns is having seasoned, experienced people involved in your project early on. So that's kind of what we've been doing, is trying to bring those people early on in their planning phase of our projects. I want to talk just real briefly about sharing risk with the contractors on the project. From an owner standpoint, our view is that you know, we should own the uncertainties of the site. That's on us. What we should not own is the uncertainty of the contractor's execution. We should leave that to the contractor. You know, his means and methods, his efficiency or inefficiencies with management needs to rest with the contractor. The tough part is balancing that. The tough part is putting together a good solicitation package that allows you to put in the ability to be flexible with the site conditions, putting in a changes clause and set different site condition clauses, things of that sort that keeps that risk with the owner, but does not take over the contractor's risk for his own efficiency and management of his project. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the last written contribution, if I may say so. It's yours.
So I think those slides maybe.
So the slides, see the slides are mixed up. Is that the case? Okay, this was supposed to be.
Yeah, I noticed that.
That's you.
It's okay, you go ahead with it.
So we're going to go da-da-da-da-da-da.
In the meantime, because I will ask the other contributors to contribute as well. One of the points, well, I noticed a few things, but one of the things that I'm interested in hearing from you, my experience is it's all related with money, of course, but also with timing. And when I hear early involvement and involve contractors very early in the process, how much time do you allow for that, and how do you manage that? Because in my experience, even on huge projects, once it always gets late before starting the decisions, political decisions, and so on and so on. But once it gets started, you're supposed to be on site already. So how do you cope with that issue, which is an important issue, I think, if you want to assess risk properly and to make the necessary investigations before. So think about that while we are hearing contributions of from guests.
See, the main objective of any project is to execute successfully. No execution can be happens without the proper teamwork between client, contractor, subcontractor, and other team members. This is the basic psychology. Then there is a one million cost like GC. But client does not understand GC's job is to supervise. Contract with document has to be closed by client. He has to take care of that. I can give you a number of examples of our phase one construction got the vessel done and we are facing the consequences. 200 contractors. as you might have heard, German and MMS mass metro. The government overnight 30 Russian engineers left the site with 6 PBMs inside. It was a design and print government. Early was the responsibility of MMS. What do you do? Arbitration is going on. I would go award the work of other contractor, brought the work to commission. But why? What happened? When detailed analysis was done in the lump sum contract, what these people have done, the contract was correct provision in the lump sum contract. If you work for 100 rupees, you take your cost is only 60 rupees. As long as you will get profit, you have taken over the money. When you started losing, you abandoned the project. Last 2 years, arbitration is going on, and I don't know, another 2 to 3 years, arbitration will continue and court cases are not, but we have to meet it. So, basic thing is, you have to be very, very transparent. The first thing, what we have observed is start with the handing over of site. In government, no project can assure you 100% handing over of site on the very first one. So, on site, once 70 to 80% of the land acquisition is done, we start our land acquisition 2 years in advance, so that we call the bid only when 70 to 80% of the area is available. We are giving on the first day. And for remaining 20% area, I define the timeline in the bid development. This is the sequence of handing over. So, there is a transparency. Contractor knows what he is supposed to do. Then, lot of issues are coming in the planning. Because most of the planning is being done not at site but in the office, air condition office. The people who are responsible, senior people does not listen to the field, junior people, their suggestions. That is our observation. So we took over as planning and design part in our phase 2. Okay, pre-design, we know how to avoid the archaeological, historical monuments if we can go. Because what happened in one of the phase 1, there was 2 churches. There was hardly any foundation. Ultimately, we had to change the TBM alignment during execution. It shows proper effort has not gone to the planning. So planning is very, very important. It can reduce your 30 to 35% of the problem if you control the proper planning. At the concept, say you can take 6 months more, 1 year more to be confident, to know where you will get the land, where you cannot get, what are the anticipated problems. Then design. We have gone for design because we are doing this for a situation that will be by design because ultimately contractor also appointed it. Name anybody, either he will appoint, why can't I appoint? So that it is my design, my risk. Ultimately it is my project, which I am accountable for. So we have taken over design risk also. And then we thought somebody can have better ideas than my EDC also. Although all are international, but I can tell you 30 to 40% of the work is cut and paste. They copy from here and here. This is very unfortunate. We are not professional. It is the truth. We have to be professional. Contractor has to work as professional. Client also has to work in a professional way, including some contractors. But it is not done. Lot of calculation mistakes in phase 1 when we analyze how we are improving. But consultants say no. This is what it is being done. No question to be asked. This is not a fair professionalism. Therefore, I have to appreciate DFI. At least people can share the view. You can refer your problem to senior person, and come to a proper professional solution. See, it's a professional thing. Nothing for individual or anybody. So, these two things are kept during construction. We are trying to incorporate whatever things is possible based on our past experience of last 6 years of phase 1 extension. In that, during pre-bid, lot of solutions are coming from the contractor because we told we are very transparent. What you want to tell, what you want to incorporate, what you want to be compensated, please tell us. We will incorporate every bit of it before the completion. So, whatever solutions comes to us, we will try to give. So, construction plan with the proper competition, and during the course, suppose some methodology is to be changed at home. We are open to the contractors. We are discussing and resolving. In phase 1, except one contractor, we will resolve all the contractual problems amicably. So, we are ready. But if you could please, thank you.
Thank you. That was short. That was short. Okay. Well, you have heard the few contributions, so I would like to have the opinion of what was said or your bit about the topic. First you then, and then Stefano, please, and then Mendo.
Okay. So, thank you, Maurice. I will just speak to my experience, which is not normally on these mega projects. I'm impressed with the way risk is identified and dealt with in a direct manner on the projects I've heard this morning. Because, and obviously on projects of such size as you gentlemen have been talking about, it has to be. When there's a big, we call it a P3 project, a public-private partnership, and there's private equity, the equity investors are insistent that risk be identified and dealt with in a direct way. But on the more run-of-the-mill, day-to-day projects that we in our industry do, there is a lack of acknowledgement and a lack of direct dealing with the risks. The most common method of risk management is to shove it off onto the other guy. The owner shoves it off onto the contractor. The general contractor shoves it off onto the subcontractor. Anyone that can shove it off onto the geotechnical consultant would do so. So everyone sort of goes into their little silo and tries to defend themselves rather than dealing with it in a direct way. So I see this in the day-to-day practice, much in the United States, much increase in design build project delivery. And one of the reasons, I think, is that it allows a greater component of risk to be allocated to the design build team. And that's fair because now a design build environment compared to a design bid build environment, the design builder has a greater ability to manage risk, but not all the risks. There still is a need for things to be identified and dealt with directly. So I'll mention a couple of examples. On one project, this is a bridge project. There is a fairly substantial geotechnical investigation is made in advance and given to the bidders to evaluate. So it's in a seismically active area. There is, if we look at the geophysical data, those data would suggest that there is not a significant risk of liquefaction. If we look at the boring data with some other types of in-situ tests, there is perhaps a suggestion that there could be liquefaction. And if there is liquefaction, there will have to be ground improvement. So now, as a design build bidder, what do you do? Do you put into your bid money for ground improvement to mitigate liquefaction or not? you could say, we'll take the risk. But is that really the right thing to do? Because clearly you could subsequently, after a more extensive investigation is done, you could find out that now you're going to have to do ground improvement, and you didn't include money in your bid for it. You include money in your bid, it could be a conservative approach, and some other bidder who overlooks it wins the job. So it's really a precarious situation because this particular item entails risk and is not dealt with in a direct, forthright way. To me, the right solution is the owner says you include it or you don't include it. So that you eliminate that risk out of the tender phase and you eliminate now the dispute that would come later. In fact, even if you decide, you go out and do some additional investigation and we decide we're satisfied, there is no risk of liquefaction, we don't have to include it in our bid. Now the owner still will be reviewing submittals and they may have a different opinion because if you have 3 geotechnical engineers in a room, you will have 4 different opinions about the thing. So the risk that your design approach will be rejected and you'll be forced into a different way is present. So to me, the solution to this is to communicate, to identify risks across the table during the tender phase so everyone can understand clearly what you're dealing with and what we're bidding on. I'll mention another example, and this one was a design and build project where a subcontractor tendered a bid to the general contractor who was the winning bidder on the job without understanding the design, the geotechnical design. These were bored piles, by the way. The geotechnical designer did not understand what the subcontractor had, how their means and methods had been proposed to the general contractor because there was not communication within the team. And of course, you can imagine this exploded into a disaster with schedule delays and everyone pointing the finger at everyone else. Now the owner was completely out of the picture of this. It was within the design build team, but it was really a problem of identifying risks and managing things, and communicating and managing things within the team. So to me, on the normal day-to-day projects that we all do, the way that we invest in proof is to have a better awareness of risk, things that are going to impact the schedule in particular, things that are going to impact construction during design, and things from the contractor's plan that may affect the design. The latter being an example. The contractor had proposed means and methods that influenced the design. So identify risk, communicate early, and be upfront about things. We have a ways to go.
Yes, I agree on that. I will leave you the word. I agree on that, and I think we have to learn from the big projects practices to import them to small project practices because it's very important. And what I think also is we have to reward, we can work with our clients and with the industry to reward transparency. Because what you are discussing is just the fact to be transparent. You may identify the risks on beforehand, and just like you say, am I going to play on it or not to win the project and then maybe claim afterwards? And I was very interested in your statement because it's the first time I hear that, and it's very interesting to hear. I have, as owner, a relationship with my contractor, and the designer is just my designer. And I think really this is completely refreshing to me because in many projects, even very, very large projects, the owner is the absent person. He is just not there and passes everything to the consultant. And that is, I agree with you, this is not correct because at the end, your contract is with the owner and he took the decision to this and this and this and this. It's not that very interesting.
And I think from the owner's perspective, if the risks are not clearly identified and conveyed, to the contractor, you suffer because you end up with a contractor that did not recognize the risk. And you filtered out the good contractor and you got the worst contractor.
I know, but how do we convince the owners that this is the case? This is the point. And this is the question for Stefano.
Well, that's pretty short. I have nothing to add. Usually, so looks like they work a lot with the contractor, so he knows what we're talking about. Yes, and also
Both sides.
Both
I'm a
sides.
double agent.
Well, really, I'm totally in agreement with what I said.
Okay.
Let's remember that here today we have some kind of owners and clients, educated, sophisticated, important type of owners and clients, core engineers. You know, well, the way that, and they use farming to approach projects, especially complicated projects. They use also element of important type of contracts, where exactly this is even more excited because you give a contribution to the project as a contractor, and sometimes as a specialty contractor. We have this experience in London, and I believe that I am missing what is really one of the more interesting type of contracts we heard, and this real. We should learn from our British friends because they have a couple of steps ahead of everyone else. You know, they have already gone through this 85 what there is out there. This type of contract we're doing is a good type of contract for complicated projects, where you share. So, this is exactly what we're talking about. And the one simple way, probably, is to have a common and a shared risk register from the very beginning. So the risk register document that goes out with the big documents, and everyone is, first to fill it, then it becomes already sharing only. Because then you have a general contractor or specialty contractor, because that's the number that we have most of the time the filter between the owner and the specialty contractor. So the sharing will be the access to the owner or the specialty contractor. We talk, of course, about the geotechnical ones, and the shared matrix, register matrix, or risk register, or risk matrix, whatever you want to call it. It's a really very practical way to exactly show what we're seeing. It will be a very good starting point.
Okay. I think you wanted to.
Yes. You know, as an owner, there's two things we absolutely don't want to do. One is we don't want to drive off the good bidder and leave the ignorant one, right? If we have an ignorant bidder, then we're going to end up with someone who's going to bid something who didn't see the faults with the uncertainties, the risk with it, and we've driven away the good bidders, then we're going to end up with a contractor that's going to fail. He's going to either do us a bad job, default on the project, or we're going to have some significant cost growth. So we absolutely don't want that as an owner. The other thing we don't want to do is drive the cost up. Right? We don't want the cost to go up to you guys bidding an unreasonable amount of conservativeness in our contract. So it's to our advantage to have the risk well defined and to understand who it is. We get good competitive bids and we get good contractors on our job. I just want to go to one little point I heard earlier about, the liquefaction issue and it not being identified. One of the things we try to do is bring contractors in early. We try to bring them in to industry days during our design phase. We do a lot of our design in-house, most all of it. So we bring our contractors in during the industry phase and say, here's where we're at this level of project development. Here's the things that we've done. Here's the things we've got concerned with. And we bring the whole group into a room. And actually, it's going on one of our larger projects this week while I'm here. And we say, tell us where we're off base. Tell us where things aren't clear enough for you, where there's uncertainty. And share that with us, and we'll go back and correct that up. And then we do that right up until the time we bid the project. Right before we bid the project, we'll bring the contractors in and have a pre-bid conference to see if the specifications are clear. One of the things that irritates me most is after we bid the project, I'm standing talking to a contractor in a forum like this a year later or so, and then he tells me, we didn't bring this up during the bid because we didn't want to give away our competitive edge. So they left us ignorant. They left us bidding a package that was putting us all at risk because they wanted to maintain their competitive edge in the bid process. So it's a two-way street. There's got to be clarity on the owner side as well as the contractor's side. And what we all should be after is getting a clear set of requirements and specifications that we can all bid and use our competitive edge in the industry to obtain the bid, not some underhandedness.
Thank you. We'll take a bit quickly. There's a last gentleman over there. I would like to hear the comment. Something.
Thank you. I can give you an example from what I see about what regulators say here about archaeological risk management, not technical, not contractual, but archaeological. When the experience of IC shows that there was a lack in risk allocation in the tender, in the contractual start phase. So we have many problems generated from this lack of archaeological risk allocation. All the archaeological surveys were in the activities of a general contractor, and all the preliminary design stage was carried out by Municipality of Roma with the archaeological authority out of the process. So when the works started in 2006, we carried out the deepest and the broadest archaeological surveys every in Roma. But during these surveys for the client, my company, any news was bad news for time and cost, because the new archaeological authority prescription. So when in 2009, 2010, we have to start with the design of the T3 extraction in the historical city center, and my company decided to change this situation. So we called the archaeological authority into the design stage, and with these authorities we drafted an archaeological handbook, a type of a risk register. In this document, archaeological authorities design all the archaeological excavation within our respective station. For each archaeological layer, the archaeological authorities set the type of excavation, the daily production, the number of operating units. All these elements were inserted into the contractual documents and used for the defined time and cost of heat restriction. So I think that now we are ready to complete the heat restriction that's under construction, and we're ready to start in collaboration with archaeological authorities since the design stage for the next time.
Thank you. So again, early involvement. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 minutes left before we close, so we have room for 2 questions or comments from the audience. We start.
Thank you, Maurice. My name is Hans, I'm list past president of EFFC. I have a question to Henrik. You always say time is of the essence, and I realized many large jobs require a lot of time to go ahead and start. And I saw it from your project as well. Whilst the Danish side seems to be quite active in moving ahead with the approach to the tunnel, I understood that the German part is busy in approvals. Unfortunately or fortunately, the German system is federal, plus a state-owned system. So, and we as the German industry are in frequent dialogue with our federal government of Germany. So my question to you is, can you name us maybe 2 or 3 bullet points that the German government, whether federal or local, can learn from the Danish people to make things faster? So we can raise it or
I think this is a private question. We are entering the German discussion here.
We keep it on the principal level, so there are no nationality mentioned here. But as I also said in my speech, I think our approach of having an hearing period where things are being revealed, where every stone is lifted, where everything is investigated, it has a certain time. It's not defined in advance, but it's an expectation, and if you could even define it in advance, that would be good. But it's where if your system is, and now you ask me the Danish system, so I bring my own rule and talk about Denmark. We know that it all ends up with something that the politicians, they take over, and that is good in this situation here, because they are the ones who drive the project. If the politicians are not backing up, then there are no big projects. And they also take the responsibility then for after the hearing period, when everybody has been heard, when the objections have been answered, when there have been hearing meetings, when the decision is written, the environmental impact assessment, they are concluded and in nature is preserved and so on and so forth. So it's simply a matter of daring to say we go from one phase to another, and not like in the Aarhus Convention, where you have the possibility to constantly bring up new issues over and over and over again. If you never put a stop, not only in sentences but also in your processes, you will never be able to build big projects. When all this is said, I actually also have to give a little political answer. We are actually favored sometimes by a long decision process. At first, I talked about Sweden. It was very good to be in that project and manage to do what you should do as an engineer, actually to be ready in the shadow of the plan approval with Swedes. I hope to be able to say the same here, that you could come into that situation where you actually are forced to go on site too early, where all these obstacles and risks which we're talking about here will reveal, because then the politicians will not understand, wait. So it's not black and white, but I'm actually not arguing for the latter, what I'm saying here. I'm just saying it's never 100-0. It's maybe 25-75% in favor of one of the issues.
Thank you. So, the time for approval gives you time for proper pattern. I take one more question and then finish that.
Thank you. Jason Bobby, Consultant Engineers Arab, also Chairman of DFI-EFFC and Digitalisation Committee. Just got a comment and a question. I'd like to congratulate the panel on a very well structured session. I think we start off with Stefano challenging us as an industry to look at how we manage risk, challenging us in very different ways. We've had 4 major clients talking about how they very openly, collaboratively address risks on their major projects. I think in the discussions we've had afterwards, from my own perspective, to try and promote digitalisation, one of the main barriers that we face is artists not wanting to openly share the data that they've created, so it's very refreshing to see mechanisms for that. Dan talked about the challenges of individual organisations that can quite compartmentalise in the way they think, so that they don't want to share the data. But for us to work going forward, we really need to look at collaborating in a much better way. And Rajeev talked about the issues of not investing in the planning stages early enough and the challenges that have on projects. It's very refreshing to see project experience and how investing in the early stages, getting a very comprehensive ground investigation of the data, enables you to create a geotechnical baseline report, can actually make a position they're happy to take on board some of that risk for ground conditions and set a baseline for a contractual aspect to overcome that. So if you wanted me to create a question out of that observation, it would probably be, can we use things like a geotechnical baseline report on much smaller projects where we are challenged by program and scale, clients want to go very quickly to help overcome those issues about data ownership and how it's shared?
Well, That's probably a question that we will not be able to answer now, and but we will take it with us because as industry and certainly as operations and institute, I think we have to work on that. Awareness of the client, the way to make him make clear that we need to approach this on a fair and timely approach. So I thank you. Well, I have to close the session, so I thank all the panel speakers for this interesting approach and debate. Thank you for staying with us before lunch. So I have two things to do. First of all, I need to thank the webinar attendees as well to be with us. I hope that it was interesting for all of you as well. And I want, Teresa asked me to remind you that you need to attach to that lunch. So I hope you're happy with you now. Thank you, and see you back there. So the schedule remains unchanged. So you did it
Das ist ja gut.